Airports move millions of travelers every day. Most people walk through security expecting the same routine: show an ID, place their bags on the belt, step through the scanner, and continue toward their gate. Most of the time, that's exactly what happens. But every single day, passengers are quietly stopped at airport security for mistakes they didn't even realize they made. Sometimes it starts with something small. A carry-on bag slides through the scanner, and suddenly an officer pulls it to the side. Another officer walks over. The traveler is asked to step aside, and the line behind them begins to slow down. Within seconds, a simple screening process turns into something much more uncomfortable. What surprises many travelers is that these situations often don't involve anything dangerous. In many cases, the person did not intentionally break any rule at all. They simply made a mistake that security officers see over and over again. According to procedures enforced by the Transportation Security Administration, some of these mistakes happen so frequently that officers encounter them dozens of times every day. And while some only cause a brief delay, others can lead to confiscated items, additional questioning, or even missing a flight entirely. Here are 10 TSA mistakes that can unexpectedly get travelers stopped at airport security. Number 1. The bag packing mistake that gets flagged constantly. You know, a lot of travelers assume that airport screening is just random. If your bag gets pulled aside, it must just be bad luck, right? But actually, one of the most common reasons bags get flagged has nothing to do with prohibited items. It really comes down to how the bag is packed. Cluttered bags get flagged. Modern airport scanners analyze shapes and densities inside luggage. When objects overlap too heavily or create a dense cluster, the image can become tough for officers to interpret. This happens a lot with electronics. A carry-on bag filled with tangled phone chargers, stacked power adapters, camera batteries, portable hard drives, and power banks can show up on a scanner as one large block. From the officer's perspective, it becomes difficult to clearly distinguish where one item ends and another begins. When that happens, the bag is often pulled aside for manual inspection. For travelers, the moment can feel confusing. Everything inside the bag is perfectly legal, yet officers still open it and examine each item. But the reason isn't suspicion, it's visibility. Security officers simply need to confirm what each object actually is. And when several electronics are packed tightly together, the only way to do that is to look inside the bag. But sometimes it isn't the bag that gets flagged. Sometimes it's what's inside a single container. Number 2. The liquid rule still stops thousands of travelers every single day. Most travelers have heard of the well-known airport liquid rule: small containers, clear bag, limited quantities. But despite how widely known the rule is, liquids still cause delays at security checkpoints every single day. The reason usually comes down to one detail many passengers misunderstand: the size of the container. 3.4-ounce limit. Airport rules generally allow liquids in carry-on bags only if they are stored in containers that hold 3.4 ounces or less. But many travelers assume the rule applies to how much liquid is inside the bottle. So, someone might bring a large shampoo bottle that's almost empty, thinking it should be allowed because only a small amount remains. Unfortunately, that's not how the rule works. Security officers check the maximum size printed on the container, not the amount of liquid left inside it. If the bottle is designed to hold more than the allowed amount, it typically cannot pass through the checkpoint. This is why travelers often find themselves throwing away half-empty bottles of lotion, sunscreen, or shampoo before continuing through security. It can feel frustrating, especially when the item seems harmless. But to security officers, the rule must be applied consistently to every passenger. And while liquids cause plenty of delays, they rarely create the biggest safety concerns. Because when certain types of batteries appear on a scanner, the situation can become much more serious. Number 3. The battery rule many travelers still break. Lithium batteries power almost every electronic device people travel with today. Phones, laptops, tablets, cameras, drones, and portable chargers all rely on them. But these batteries also present a unique risk in aviation. When lithium batteries are damaged or short-circuited, they can overheat or even catch fire. Because of that risk, airlines and airport security agencies enforce strict guidelines for how they must be transported. One of the most common mistakes involves spare batteries placed inside checked luggage. Many travelers assume it's safer to store extra batteries inside their suitcase. But in reality, spare lithium batteries are generally required to stay in carry-on bags where the cabin crew can respond quickly if a problem occurs. Another issue happens when loose batteries are tossed into a bag without protection. If the metal terminals of a battery touch keys, coins, or other metal objects, they can create a short circuit. That's why, safety guidelines recommend storing spare batteries in protective cases or separate packaging. Power banks can also raise concerns if they appear damaged or swollen. In some cases, travelers report additional questions when unusually large battery packs appear during screening. Most of the time, it's simply a precaution, but the next mistake can escalate much faster. Number 4. The forgotten item that triggers security escalation. Another situation that surprises travelers happens when something in their bag was never meant to be there in the first place. Many people use the same backpack or carry-on bag for everyday life. They might take it to work, the gym, or outdoor activities. Then, when it's time to travel, they simply grab the bag and head to the airport without, checking every pocket. That's when forgotten items sometimes appear during the screening process. Small multi-tools, pocket knives, or utility blades are among the most common examples. Some travelers also forget they packed self-defense items such as pepper spray or tactical keychains. When these items appear on the scanner, officers must remove the bag for inspection. For the traveler, the moment often comes as a shock. They may not even remember the item being inside their bag. In most situations, the item is simply confiscated and placed in the prohibited items bin. But depending on the object and the airport's procedures, officers may pause the process and ask additional questions. That's when a routine security screening can start to feel uncomfortable. But surprisingly, the next mistake doesn't involve anything inside a bag at all. It involves something travelers say out loud. Number 5. The joke that can shut down a checkpoint. Airport security is not a place where humor always works the way people expect. Security jokes are taken seriously. Some travelers try to make jokes while going through the checkpoint. The lines are long, the environment can feel stressful, and someone might try to lighten the mood with a casual comment. But certain topics are taken extremely seriously. Remarks about bombs, weapons, or threats can trigger immediate attention from security staff, even when the traveler clearly meant it as a joke. Security officers are trained to treat any mention of potential threats seriously. That means they cannot simply assume the comment was harmless. Instead, the screening process may pause while officers clarify the situation. In some cases, the traveler may be moved aside so security personnel can ask additional questions. Other passengers nearby may also experience delays while the situation is resolved. For someone who believed they were making a harmless joke, the response can feel surprising. But airport security procedures are designed around caution, not interpretation. And sometimes the mistake that causes problems happens even earlier than this. In fact, it can begin before a traveler even reaches the checkpoint. Before we continue, there's something many travelers don't realize. Security officers say the situations that turn into the longest delays often start with mistakes that seem completely harmless. A bottle that looks fine, a charger packed the wrong way, or a comment someone thought was just a joke. At first, everything appears normal, but once something unusual appears on the scanner or during screening, officers must resolve the situation before allowing the passenger to continue. And the next few situations are the ones that surprise travelers the most. Number 6. The ID issue. Catching travelers off guard. Another problem that has started catching travelers by surprise involves identification. Before entering the security checkpoint, every passenger must present an acceptable form of ID. But new enforcement changes connected to the Real ID program have created confusion for some travelers. Certain older driver's licenses do not meet updated federal identification standards. When a traveler presents one of these non-compliant IDs, security officers may need to conduct additional identity verification. That process can involve extra questions or documentation checks. For passengers who expected to pass through quickly, those extra minutes can feel stressful, especially when the security line continues moving while they wait. Most of the time, the situation is resolved without issue, but the delay can be enough to create anxiety for travelers who are already close to boarding time. And identification isn't the only thing that can trigger extra attention. Sometimes the scanner flags something travelers can't even see. Number 7. The clothing choice that triggers extra screening. Sometimes the reason a traveler gets stopped has nothing to do with their bag. It has to do with what they're wearing. Body scanners used at many airport checkpoints analyze the shape of a person's body and detect unusual objects or dense materials. When something appears out of place, the system alerts the officer monitoring the scan. Large metal accessories are one of the most common triggers. Oversized belt buckles, heavy jewelry, and thick watch bands can all activate additional screening. Layered clothing can also create shapes the scanner cannot easily interpret. Travel jackets with hidden pockets sometimes cause alerts as well. For many passengers, the moment comes as a surprise. They walk through the scanner believing they removed everything required. Then the machine signals that something still needs to be checked. At that point, an officer may briefly examine the area that triggered the alert. Most of the time, the process takes only a few seconds. But the next situation can feel far more uncomfortable for travelers. Number 8. Why body scanners sometimes lead to pat-downs. When a scanner detects something unusual, officers must resolve the alert before allowing the passenger to continue. Sometimes the cause is simple: a coin left in a pocket, a phone that wasn't removed, or even a folded boarding pass. But the scanner can also detect things travelers might not think about. Medical devices, support braces, or thicker clothing folds can all appear as unfamiliar shapes. When that happens, officers may perform a brief pat-down of the flagged area. For someone who wasn't expecting it, the experience can feel awkward. Many travelers don't even know what triggered the alert. But from a security perspective, officers must confirm that nothing dangerous is hidden in that location. And if officers believe something might have been intentionally concealed, the situation can change quickly. Number 9. Trying to conceal a restricted item. Most passengers cooperate when an item isn't allowed through security. They accept that it will be confiscated or choose to leave the line. But occasionally, officers encounter travelers who attempt to hide restricted items. Someone might tuck an object deep inside a bag or hide it within another container. However, security officers are trained to recognize patterns that suggest concealment. When the shape of an object appears intentionally obscured on the scanner, it usually triggers closer inspection. Instead of a quick bag check, the search may become more detailed. Officers may ask questions about the item and how it was packed. For passengers already under time pressure, that extra scrutiny can quickly create tension. What might have been a simple confiscation becomes a longer delay while security resolves the concern. But the final mistake is the one that causes travelers to miss flights completely. Number 10. Refusing screening or arguing with officers. The last mistake has nothing to do with bags, liquids, or scanners. It involves how travelers react when something unexpected happens during screening. Going through airport security is a required step before entering the secure area of the airport. Every passenger must complete the screening process before reaching their gate. Occasionally, a traveler becomes frustrated when their bag is searched or an item is confiscated. In those moments, some passengers decide they don't want to continue with the process. Travelers technically have the option to decline screening procedures, but there's an important consequence. If someone refuses the required screening, they generally cannot proceed into the secure area. In other words, they won't be able to reach their flight. Even arguing extensively with officers can slow things down enough to create another problem. While the situation is being resolved, boarding continues without them. And by the time everything is sorted out, the plane may already be preparing to depart. Most travelers who get stopped at airport security never intended to break any rules. In fact, many believed they were doing everything correctly. They packed their bags the way they always do, brought items they've traveled with before, and expected the screening process to be routine. But airport security doesn't operate on assumptions. It operates on strict procedures designed to keep air travel safe. Many of those procedures involve small details that travelers rarely think about until something gets flagged. A bottle that's slightly too large, a battery packed the wrong way, a forgotten item hidden in a pocket. Individually, they may seem minor, but inside a security checkpoint, even small mistakes can quickly turn into delays, searches, or uncomfortable questions, which means the difference between walking through security without a problem and getting stopped in front of hundreds of people is often just one small mistake.